Sean Kelly is next.
Neil Diamond, really. Speaking of great music that Alice loved, Neil Diamond? He was great in The Last Waltz. Do you remember that, when he showed up in The Last Waltz? Alice, I first met Alice when she was Mick Jagger in Lemmings, and we became instant friends because I like to think she got my jokes. And that's all I ask, really, from another person. And she's maybe the only one who ever met my high standards. I'd like to tell you about a public performance that Alice gave that Josh is the only person here, I believe, who was present for this particular extraordinary piece of theater. After I met Alice, she very soon after that, she met my children. And that was love at first sight. In their case, love at first sound, because they were actually meeting Francis the Badger. Alice was Francis the Badger on a series of records of books by the Hobans, and she was the ideal Francis the Badger. Even not long ago, I brought Alice to a kindergarten where my granddaughter was, and Alice began to speak, and they recognized Francis the Badger. It transcended generations. But anyhow, my kids were so crazy about Alice, and she seemed to like them too, that it was obvious that we had to get her into the family somehow. But with the question of, it didn't, like, Auntie Alice didn't seem right. A couple of years later, anyway, we were, my wife and newborn daughter were out in Los Angeles with me when Alice was living there, being her green car. And she got a brilliant idea, which is that she could be Rory's godmother. That way we would, in fact, be in a family. And I tried to explain to Alice that the Jewish thing might be a problem in terms of the godmothering business, but she said no, that wasn't going to be a problem. She arranged the whole deal. She booked a high Episcopal church somewhere on Sunset Boulevard, and the whole thing was set up. All the baby and mother and I had to do was show up, and Alice would take care of the rest. And Josh, of course, this meant Josh had to be the godfather. And during the ceremony, Josh mainly studied his shoes, as you can imagine. But Alice was into it, all right? Do you remember the scene in the movie, The Godfather? Alice made Al Pacino look like he was phoning it in, okay? Do you renounce Satan? I do renounce him, right? And would you accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior? I so deeply do, right? She was being a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant fanatic. And no one was there to see this except for a parish full of people looking kind of frightened and confused. So that was when Alice became a member of my family officially. And when Alice died, it was a death in our family. But I have a feeling that it was a death in a lot of families. And we're going to go on missing her for a long time. I think they're now going to show Alice being funny after me being maudlin. Thank you.
I knew that a lot of friends of mine, some of my so-called friends, had been using Perrier. And they were always saying things to me like, have a Perrier, or how about a Perrier and lime? And they were always trying to get me into it. And there was a lot of peer group pressure, I guess. And then one day I was just at a party, and I was talking to a guy, and he said to me, can I get you Perrier or something? And I said, yeah, okay. I figured I could handle it. I guess that's what everybody thinks. And before I knew it, I was like up to, about 6 glasses of Perrier, bottles a day. And first thing I'd do in the morning would be like light a cigarette and have a Perrier, And then I just sort of naturally started getting into salads. And it was like, mung beans and tofu. The whole sick organic trip, you know what I'm saying? And then I thought everything was, like my lifestyle wasn't really affected or anything. And then this friend of mine comes over and she says to me, hey, let's jog. So I guess my head was really fucked up by now with, Perrier and all the salads and everything. So I just said, okay, fine, let's jog, And so I'm doing 5 miles a day, right? And then I just said, okay, hey, 10. Why not 10? Why not? Huh, So I don't know. You know what I'm talking about? Sweatsuits. I'm talking about headbands. I'm talking about a lot of very expensive running shoes. And in fact, the ones that I like the best are like the little Nike Road Runners, the ones that look like little sports cars. And then there was all these subscriptions to the magazines, too. I had to get to New York, New West, New Times, High Times, Outside, Apartment Life, and I'm living in a van. So I was up to about, I think I'm into about this time, I'm into about a case. Yeah, I'm already up to about a case a day at this time. And I knew that I was in a lot of trouble, but I didn't really know what to do about it. I think the whole thing, I guess, sort of came to this really ugly head when I had this dream. I had this dream where I was in a room, okay, with my father, and I'm nude, and he has this like enormous bottle of Perrier, right? And he says, here, honey, why don't you drink this? And it's like really fizzy, like it's too fizzy, I couldn't swallow it, And he says, it's okay, honey, I know you like it. And I'm saying, no, I can't, please don't make me, it's too fizzy. And he says, no, but you like it. And I said, oh, no, I can't. So when I woke up, I just said, that's it, okay? That's it. No more Perrier. But, God, it was not easy. And, you just can't stop, you can't. And I had one good friend that came through. And she said to me, God, I wish you'd go with me to these meetings. I really, really wish you would. And I said, okay, I'm yours. I'm ready, okay. And I got to tell you something. She really saved it for me. Because if it wasn't for her, I would never have found Jesus. Praise the Lord.
Hi, I'm Michael McKeon. I wanted to say that how lovely it is to be here with so many of Alice's friends and family. And I want to thank Josh for inviting us. When you hear from Josh, you're not just getting invited, you're getting installed. And it's lovely company. I don't know about you, but I've always preferred elves to angels. Angels are very decorative, and they're very smart, and they're very good. But elves make things like shoes, and music, and jokes, and friends. I was Alice's friend for the last 14 years, and I will be her friend until the day I die. My wife has been friends for longer than that, and we project an even longer future for her. This is Annette O'Toole.
I met Alice in 1982. We did a play together at the Old Globe in San Diego that Jack O'Brien directed called Yankee Wise. And I didn't know a lot about Alice. I only knew about Oliver and all the musicals that I had the albums and would look at her picture on the... But meeting her was, it was instant love. She was the greatest friend. She was so fun and supportive, and I was also one of those chosen ones. I don't know why. I just adored her, and we found out when we were working together at first that we wore the same bra size. So for the opening night gift for Yankee Wives, she gave me this bright green sweatshirt that had 32 B's embroidered all over it. And I wore it proudly. I'm not a 32B anymore because I've had children. But anyway, she was always in my life and always there, and especially the last 5 or 6 years when I was in New York a lot more and we got to spend a lot of time together. And she was a proud Tony nominator and voter, and she would go 2 and 3 times sometimes back to shows to make sure she'd seen performances and sets and all these things she had to look at. And so I was lucky enough to get to go with her to some of the shows, and she took me to Sondheim on Sondheim, and it was like her 3rd time to see it because she was, adored Barbara Cook, as we all do. And so she took me backstage after the show, and I got to go to Barbara Cook's dressing room and first of all, just watch these 2 women talk to one another. I was just mesmerized just watching them communicate. And Alice took her Tony ballot backstage, and so Barbara Cook could witness her checking off Barbara Cook's name as Best Featured Actress in a Musical. It was a wondrous night. The very, very last time I was ever with Alice was, she took me to see The Normal Heart. And it was a great night. And we went outside, and I said, we'll never get a cab, we'll never find a cab. And a cab just came and stopped, and I put her in it. And the very last time I spoke to Alice, she was calling me from the theater. She'd taken Josh to see, I think it was The Motherfucker with a Hat. And she said, "Oh, hello, darling," like she always did. I said, "Oh, I've got to turn my phone off. I heard you were leaving town. I just want to make sure I got to talk to you before you left, and bye." And that was the last time I heard her voice. And I emailed with her the day before I heard that she'd gone on. But anyway, Alice wrote something in 1982 when I first met her that we'd like to read to you, and I had copies made of it. And the great thing is it's on her own stationery with Alice Playten across the top, and yeah. Anyway, so we're going to read it. Blueberry muffins. 12 muffins, 400 degrees, 20 to 25 minutes. 1.5 cups whole wheat pastry flour, 1 cup blueberries.
Fresh or frozen, unsweetened.
1 egg, 1/2 cup milk.
Or half and half.
2 tablespoons melted butter.
Or margarine.
2 teaspoons baking powder, 1/2 teaspoon salt, 1/2 cup sugar.
Preheat oven to 400 degrees.
Mix 1/2 cup of flour with blueberries and set aside.
Beat egg lightly by hand in mixing bowl. Stir in milk and melted butter.
And add the flour, baking powder, salt, and sugar over egg mixture. Stir enough to moisten flour.
Batter should not be real smooth.
Then add remaining flour and blueberries.
Divide into 12 muffin cups and put in muffin tray and into oven for 20 to 25 minutes. Thank you. Thank you, Alice.
Our next speaker is Edward Barnes.
I met Alice in the mid-1990s. She and I were working on a show out of town in Philadelphia. I had written some music for the show, and she was the star. And while we were in rehearsals, one day she said to me, "Well, stop by my hotel room after rehearsals and we'll listen to some music." And I was like, "Well, sure, that'd be great." So I went to her hotel room, and you have to keep in mind that I was this kind of Juilliard-trained classical music geek. And I didn't know showbiz from anything. I really didn't know who Alice was. So the first hour of that night was her telling me her life story, which had me laughing because she had so many showbiz stories that were really wonderful. Then she said, "Okay, I want you to hear some music." She had a boombox on her bedstand, and she pressed play. And the first thing that came on was Thelonious Monk. And it's playing, and she's looking down, and all of a sudden she looks up, and she just starts to sing, over top Thelonious Monk, a Rodgers and Hart song. But what was interesting was they went together. This was followed by a Gershwin instrumental underneath that she sang Elton John on top of. And I said, "What is this, Alice?" And she said, "This is this act that Stephen Holden talked about that I've been working on, and this is some of the music for it." And I was struck by a bunch of things because in rehearsal, I knew Alice could not read a note of music. She had no musical training whatsoever. She couldn't play a musical instrument. How had she figured this out? And as we talked, I began to realize that she had developed the most amazing set of musical ears and had trained herself all by herself simply by listening to music. She had figured out the harmonies, she'd figured out the rhythms, she'd figured out how things could be laid one on top of the other. And it was fascinating, just fascinating. And I learned two things that night about Alice. The first was music was probably, besides Josh, the most important thing in her life. And the second was that I'd made a really good friend. Now, over the years, she and I collaborated several times writing songs together. They were always songs that she was going to sing at an event or a little project or something. Now, when I say collaborating with Alice, that basically meant that she decided how the song would go and I would write it down. But we had a blast doing it. We would have some arguments about how things would go, but basically that was the routine. We did one song, which was a version of the Hokey Pokey for a radio show, in which the Hokey Pokey was used as a seduction song, a sexual seduction song. So I arrived at Alice's apartment, and she had lined up 7 or 8 CDs, and she says to me, "Okay, this is how it goes. It starts with me by myself, then we do Hokey Pokey, Peggy Lee, then we do Hokey Pokey, Aretha Franklin, then we do Hokey Pokey," and it went on like this all the way to the end, and we ended in a stripper thing. And it was great. We had a lot of fun with that. We also developed this kind of relationship where we would swap music back and forth all the time. First it was like CDs, then it became those little memory sticks where you could put 5 or 6 CDs on. And it was always the most sort of interesting stuff. I would send her CDs of Bebo Valdez, the 92-year-old Cuban pianist. She would send me outtakes of Aretha Franklin recording sessions. And I would go to Brazil and bring her back music. She'd go to Vegas, bring me back the Beatles' Love Show that Cirque du Soleil had done. One of the most curious things she ever gave me was a CD of banjo music from Africa. And I thought, what is this about? So I called her on the phone. I said, "Alice, banjo music from Africa? How did you come on this?" She said, "Oh, I was listening to NPR and I heard something and I thought it was really nice, so I tracked it down." I said, "Yeah, but like, what do you see in that?" She said, "I don't know." She says, "I just find it really comforting." And I always remembered that remark. And several years later, I was up in Montreal working, and she called me on the phone. She said, "I have this DVD of a movie I want you to look at because I think it would make a good musical." So she sent me the DVD, and I looked at it. I didn't really think it was the right project for me, but I called her on the phone. The project was this film, a Japanese film called Afterlife. And the concept of this film was that when someone passes away, they go to a kind of way station. And at the way station, these sort of angel figures help each person choose one memory in their life that becomes the heaven that they go to. And so Alice was fascinated by this. And in the process of this phone conversation, we were talking back and forth about, well, what would your choice be and what would your choice be? Alice says, "Oh, I don't know, but all mine are musical." I said, "Well, like what?" And she had picked one out. Seemed sometime in the 1970s, and I may have some details wrong, but in the 1970s, she found herself backstage at a Willie Nelson concert. And she was hanging with Willie and the boys. And as the evening wore on, I think there was lots of pot involved. The boys sort of started trailing out, and eventually she and Willie were left alone in the room. So they were swapping back songs that each of them knew. Do you know this? Do you know that? Back and forth. Finally, Alice said something, a song that Willie said something like, how does that go again? And Alice started to sing it. Willie starts to play along. Alice sings some more. Willie plays some more. And slowly, this moment built up where the two of them were together making music. And somewhere in that brief moment, magic happened. And Alice was transported into some sort of place of absolute pure joy. And she said to me, that is what I want my heaven to be. And I said, what was the instrument Willie was playing? She said, well, he didn't have his guitar, so he played a banjo. And I thought, oh, that's what that's about. When she got sick and was in the hospital and I would go in and sit with her for chemo, we had a kind of running thing. I would go in and I'd say, what you listening to on your iPad? And she said, a little bit of heaven. I said, the banjo music? Uh-huh. The last thing I wanted to tell you was that Alice and I were great fans of Yamaha pianos. And when I lived in LA, I had a Yamaha upright, and Alice had a Yamaha upright in her apartment in New York. When I sold my house in LA and moved back to New York, I also sold the Yamaha upright. So for years, I had no piano. This bothered Alice a great deal. She felt I should be playing a piano all the time. In the spring, she called me one night on the phone, and she said, there's something I want to talk to you about. I said, okay. She started to cry. And she said that it was very important to her that her music go on. And that music was represented by her piano. And she wanted to know that when the time came, would I take the piano? And I didn't even know what to say. I said, Alice, I would be honored, of course. So we settled that. And unfortunately, that time came way sooner than I ever expected. My partner and I bought a house up in the mountains in the Catskills back in December, and it has lots of rooms, so finally there's space for a piano. In August, Alice's piano arrived at the house, and it's in my studio up there, and Josh was kind enough to give me a picture of Alice, which sits right on my piano. And every time I play that piano, Alice is right there with me, and she and I share a little bit of heaven. Thank you.
This is the worst birthday I've ever had. I won't be until late, Mamie. We'll celebrate tomorrow. So he says. A big chicken feed deal. Tomorrow's not my birthday. There's a crisis in Little Rock, maybe. Well, pork and salt to you. Why doesn't he just send in the troops and shut those stupid bigots up? But no, he's got to have meetings on my birthday. You know the rules, Mamie. Keep your nose out of presidential business. Be a good girl. Know your place. Yes, honey. Oh, look at that. Footprints on the carpet. I hate that. Happy worst birthday to me. In the shade of my mother's magnolia tree, you promised your love upon bended knee. I said I do, I will, I trust. You said you must, you. Mamie, you must not walk around with a drink in your hand, even if it is just ginger ale. Yes, honey. You know what the press will say. I know what the press
like? Yes, Mrs. Eisenhower, you're the First Lady. That's right, I am. Washington, what a town! Why, look at all the people. Came out just to wish me a happy birthday. Now that's an honor. Listen to him. Listen to him. Where's baby? Here I am. You know better than the press. What you get is what you see. I can't help adoring you and you can't help adoring me. Where's baby? Over here. Howdy, pops. Baby smiles, traffic stops. Sure, I like being Mrs. Ike, and I like to think you agree. Where's baby? Here's baby, sweetheart of the GOP. I'm no old Bess Truman with a prune pit for a face. I'm no Eleanor Roosevelt. I know my place. I know my job is to be a wife. My husband's job is to lead. I got my man where I want him home. What else could any girl need? There's nothing else I need. There's nothing else. Nothing. I'm no Eleanor Roosevelt. Stop the car. When's the next train to Little Rock? I'll go down there myself and see about this crisis. Maybe if I put in an appearance, those stupid bigots will, I don't know, settle down. And then I can get on home early to his birthday girl. I don't know, Mrs. E. You don't know beans from a beanbag. All aboard! Where's baby? Here she comes. Holy smoke, she's no queen, she's just folk. I ain't been sent by the president, but I'm bent on helping my man. Where's baby? Here's baby. What I can't do, maybe can.
They don't have to be on leashes here, officer.
Detective. Yeah, we know that. Can we ask you a couple questions?
Sure, about what?
Do you recognize this woman?
Well, that's Sandy, of course, and that's Matt. Why?
I'm sorry to tell you, Ms. Meekin was attacked by a dog not too far from here.
Oh, my God, that was Sandy? Somebody spoke to the search crew this morning, but you're still looking?
Do you know if Sandy had any problems with the other owner? Someone with a dog that could have done something like that?
No, I mean, everybody knows each other pretty well here, and the dogs are all familiar with one another. There was this one person.
Who's that?
He comes by now and then with his Rottweiler. She's fairly bossy with the smaller animals, and some of the owners spoke to him about it, and I'm pretty sure Sandy was one of them.
You know his name or where he lives?
No, I'm sorry. But I know he recently got a ticket from the park police for not having his dog on a leash.
Thanks.
I am the Lord of Darkness. I require the solace of the shadows and the dark of the night. Sunshine is my destroyer. All this shall change. Tonight, the sun sets forever. There shall never be another dawn. Enter! Ah, Blix, come closer.
You
You summoned me, Lordship.
Are you not the most loathsome of my goblins?
Truly, Master.
And is your heart black and full of hate?
Black as midnight, black as pitch, blacker than the foulest witch.
That is why I have called you here. Since I must remain in darkness, you shall be my eyes and ears.
You do me great honor, Lord.
Something troubles me. I feel a presence in the forest. A force I had mercifully almost forgotten.
Must be dread indeed to trouble you, Lordship.
Looking upon these frail creatures, one would not think that they could contain such power. One could rule the universe with it. You must find them for me and destroy them.
What do they look like, Lord?
Fool! Let this serve to remind you. They are each crowned with a single horn reaching straight to heaven.
I get the point, Lord.
Bring the horns to me. You will be well rewarded. You shall be a prince here in my realm.
A rare privilege, Master. Where should I look, sire?
There is only one lure for such disgusting goodness. One bait that never fails.
What be this bait? Please, you teach me.
Innocence. Innocence.